our pleasure tonight to have with us Josh Starmer, the founder of StatQuest. Hi. And it's one of our PhD students, Avandara, who's in doing her PhD in bioinformatics. That's going to conduct the interview with him. So we'll take questions at the end. And in the meantime, we'll ask that everyone is muted just to make sure that we hear everyone wonderfully. Thank you.
Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for attending the conference part of this closing event of DataTrack. So today I have the honor to introduce you our first guest, Joshua Starmer, who is the creator of the YouTube channel StatQuest. As scientists, either we are biologists, biochemists, or bioinformaticians, we all know that statistics are essential for our work, but we can't deny that it's really a love at first sight. So let's ask a few questions to Josh to know why he began to make debunking video on p-value or maximum likelihood or linear regression. So hi, Josh, how are you?
I'm doing great. Hello. Congratulations, everyone, by the way. I think what you've done is amazing.
So can you say a few words about your background and tell us the story behind the creation of StatQuest?
Sure. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys are familiar. I run a YouTube channel called StatQuest, where I put up videos on statistics and machine learning. But I didn't always do that. I think StatQuest, for me, actually probably started when I was in graduate school. And I took my very first statistics class ever, and it didn't make any sense at all. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to know how to do this stuff. I got a PhD. I was working on a PhD in bioinformatics. And it was basically run by the stats department. I mean, bioinformatics can be a lot of things, but where I was, it was basically run by the stats department, and they just expected us to know this stuff. And it was hard. It was very hard for me. And so I started writing these things called what I called the notes, or the statistics notes. And I would just try to do everything I could. I would study every day to try to figure out what was going on. And I finally understood it. And I actually started to understand it so well that the statistics PhD majors started asking me for help. And so that was maybe the original StatQuest back then. But then it became more formal when I got my postdoc. I started working in a genetics lab. Where I was the numbers person, and everybody else in the lab did research experiments. And they did all these really crazy, elaborate things that would take weeks to do. And then they'd give me a little bit of data, and they'd say, "Can you help me with this t-test?" And I would go, "Sure, I can do that. That's great." But I wanted them to know that what I did, that the t-test wasn't magic. And so I started making these weekly presentations or monthly presentations on various things like the median, or what's a box plot, or what is a t-test actually doing. And I would make these little presentations. And the lab I worked in was a pretty big lab. There were about 20 people in it, and there were people that would come and go every year. We had students rotating through. And so what I decided to do was I would put these presentations online, with the expectation that no one would watch them other than people who came through the lab, because I didn't want to have to do the same p-value presentation every 3 months. So I just figured when a new person comes to the lab, I'll say, "Hey, if you want to learn about p-values, here we've got these videos." And I'll be honest, for the first couple of years, that's all that watched it. We got like 4 or 5 views. But sooner or later, it kind of caught on. And then obviously much more people than just the people in the lab watch StatQuest these days. And it became so successful that I was actually able to leave the job that I had in the lab to do working on the YouTube channel full time, which completely blows my mind. That's something I never expected would happen. So it's been a really fun and exciting ride to be on. So that's the background of the channel.
So you said that you become a full-time YouTuber creator. How did you feel when you decided that you want to be a full-time YouTuber?
The audio on my end freaked out about halfway through that question. Can you restate it?
Yeah, so basically, I was asking you, how did you feel when you decide that, okay, I will start StatQuest and do a YouTube channel, and I will leave to do, like that would be my new job, basically.
That was one of the scariest things I've ever done. It's funny. I've always played music and I've always played with a lot of musicians that are actually really high quality. And I remember talking to this one guy who became a professional musician, and he said it felt like jumping off a cliff. And that's the way it felt like for me. I felt like I was going from this secure job where I knew that at the end of the month I was going to get this much money, and I knew that would cover my bills, and I knew I'd be able to buy groceries and pay my rent and all those things, to going on YouTube, which was, who knows how much money I'm going to make from that every month. It's highly variable, and there's no guarantees. I mean, I guess there's no guarantees in any jobs. You could always lose your job, and we've had economic hard times, but this just seemed very, it was very scary. And it also, I'll be honest, it happened about a year ahead of time. I was sort of watching the way the channel was growing and the way revenue was coming in. And I thought, what would be great is if I could keep working in my job for another year, and then maybe I'll be in a place where I won't be panicked and I won't feel like I'm jumping off that cliff. But what happened, the way it happened, is I was having one of these meetings with my boss, and I was telling him what I was working on and what projects I was working on. And this meeting was not supposed to go this direction, but I said, but I'm going to be honest with you, Terry. The thing I really love doing, the thing I'm most passionate about, the thing I think makes the most difference is working on StatQuest. And he said, well, what are you doing in the lab? That's what you need to be doing. And I said, yeah, you're right. And that was it. I mean, I didn't leave my job that afternoon, but I left 2 weeks later. And it all happened very quickly. But to my boss's credit, it was almost like he was sort of like my dad, and he was saying, you need to get out of the house. You'll never find out if this is the thing for you if you don't try it. And if this is really what you're passionate about, you've got to try it. So I went out, and I panicked, and I freaked out, and I've actually talked to a bunch of people about this since then, and apparently this is what everybody does. Everybody panics. And what you do is you take on a lot, like way too much consulting work. Like anything that would come my way, I said, yes, I'll do it. And I ended up doing so much consulting work that I wasn't doing anything on my YouTube thing. And the whole point of leaving my job was to work on this, but I was doing this other stuff. And so it took me about a month or maybe 2 months to kind of like wrap up that consulting stuff and get comfortable with the fact that I could do this. I mean, I've got YouTube, but I ended up making little study guides that people can purchase from my website, and I do these paid webinars where it's almost like a workshop where people can come, and I will go through a data set from start to finish, like every little detail you could possibly imagine. Like, you get a new data set, what do? You got to clean that data set. So we actually spend a lot of time cleaning the data set and just, dealing with missing data, reformatting columns because they're in the wrong data type and all that. We do all that nasty stuff. And then we finally, apply some machine learning method to it. So I ended up kind of diversifying what I was doing, but it's all sort of related to the channel, and it's just super fun because I feel like I'm learning a lot. People who pay attention to the channel are learning a lot, and I think we're having a good time of it.
And what type of challenge did you meet while you were creating your channel? Like, do you have it, like, can you explain us any difficulty that you face related, for example, to the YouTube platform or?
There's a bunch of challenges, and some of the challenges are things that I think anyone can relate to. Um, when I make a video, I have to sit in front of a blank page. At the start, there's nothing there, and you have to just create this thing out of nowhere. And it's like writing a manuscript or a paper or a thesis or something like that. It's usually just that first, just getting going sometimes takes forever, and it takes everything you've got. And at the end of the day, you've written one sentence, and that, but once you're going, it becomes easier. But so that's one thing that's hard. It is sort of I will say it is an around the clock kind of job. I feel like I wake up at first thing in the morning, and the first thing I do is I check comments. There's always, people all over the world are watching YouTube. And so there's people commenting, not just during a regular work day. And so it's like the first thing I do in the morning. And I don't do it right before I go to bed, but maybe an hour before I go to bed, I'll have my last sort of check in with the channel. And there's also, and this is going to sound a little sad, I had to like toughen up a little bit emotionally, because once your channel really starts taking off, you get exposed to millions of amazing people. The world is full of amazing people, but there's also an occasional meanie out there. And it took me, these are people that if I just lived a normal life, I would never meet ever in my whole life. But occasionally someone who is just a mean person will get on my channel and just start trying to cause trouble. And they'll say really mean things about me, or they'll make personal comments about me. And that's something I wasn't expecting, and I had no idea about. I always thought that's what happened if you were like Kim Kardashian, some mega celebrity. I thought, why would anyone criticize some guy who's just trying to help someone with their statistics homework? But if I guess in any context, doesn't matter if you're a celebrity or someone teaching machine learning, if you become popular enough, sooner or later you're going to run into a million, like I said, billions and just awesome people. But occasionally you run into a meanie, and I had to learn how to deal with that. That was a learning curve, and but it's something I've learned how to deal with. I don't let it get it down. It used to really hurt me, and it got me down, and it made me feel bad. And now I know that those people, it's just, that's their problem and it's not mine. So.
Okay, so I have a last question, and after I will let people from the crowd to ask you other question.
Sure.
So if you have any advice for people who wants to do any open science initiative as yours,
yeah,
what will it be?
I would say, I'll tell you my trick. I'm going to tell you my trick. What I do is I'm always trying to learn new stuff. And when I try to learn new stuff, I'll read a bunch of stuff. I'll watch a bunch of stuff. But there's always something that I don't get. There's something where there's a step that's too big, and I go, well, how did they get from this to this? Whenever I'm reading a mathematical proof or something, I just feel like something was skipped. And I always think, well, maybe if I was smarter, I would understand. But I'll be honest, that's my secret sauce. I look for those moments where I suddenly feel dumb, and I go, if I can explain that to people, everyone will be happy. Because it feels like it's just me, that I'm the only one who doesn't understand it. When I read this stuff, I go, well, clearly everyone else must understand this, because I'm the only one who doesn't understand how they got from here to here. But what I do is I focus on that chunk, and I make a video that explains that thing. And that's my secret. And I feel like anyone could do that, and we would all benefit. It's filling in these gaps and looking for what's not said instead of a lot of people. A lot of people on the internet, and there's a lot of people doing great stuff, but a lot of people do just sort of copy what other people are doing. And I say, that's fine, because you might have another twist. You might say, well, in the context of business analytics, we're going to do the exact same thing, but we'll use different examples. And I think that's great. But I think a more helpful thing to do is to figure out what that first explanation, what was missing? What did they not say? They explained a lot of great stuff, but what did they leave out? And if you can focus on those bits they left out, then everyone gets a complete picture and everyone can understand it. That's my encouragement. If you want to start a channel, please focus on the parts that everyone ignores or says, oh, this is obvious, because it's never obvious.
Thank you. So does someone has any question for Josh?
I might have one.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Go ahead, Caroline.
Very, very interesting. My question was, because you're from a academic background, right? So what have you learned during your study and your time working as a bioinformatician that can be used when creating those new videos that
Yeah, I learned some really great stuff. And one of the things I learned, what was great about working with, because I was a math person or a statistician. Okay. Technically, I was a statistician. But I was working with people that hated statistics and they hated analytics. And that's the reason why they went into genetics. And learning how to talk to those people in a way that they understood was super helpful. And I think that's something that's really helped my channel, in that I've had a lot of practice speaking to people that didn't want to learn this stuff to begin with. And I used to, when I did these weekly or monthly talks in the lab, there was always someone out in the audience that I could just look to, and and as soon as they looked really confused, they go, whenever they do that, I know I had to work harder on whatever that little detail I was trying to explain was. And so that's something I think is super helpful, is being able to communicate with other people that are outside of data analysis or data science. I think that's one of the most critical things to learn in data science, is how to speak to people outside of the field, because people that do a data analysis and statistics and bioinformatics, we're basically the messenger to people that don't know how to do these things. And it's super important to understand or practice communicating with them.
Yes, true. And you talked about your community, so the people that watch the video being worldwide. Do you know in which field these person are? Is it for interest, like personal interest, that I want to learn stats, or are they grad students, or do you have that kind of information?
So YouTube, the big like creepy company, gives me some demographics.
Okay.
So I and I don't know where they get these demographics from. I don't know how they know these things, but they tell me that most of the people that watch my channel are between the ages of 25 and 35. And and from the questions that I get plus that knowledge, my guess is that it's a lot of people that went through college and now they're either in grad school or they have a job that isn't really that satisfying and they want to move. I mean, that's sort of what grad school is as well. You know, it's a way of transitioning from one thing to another. And so I get a lot of people that are trying to change their career or change their path just a little bit. And I think that's the biggest audience. I get a lot of college students that are learning statistics and stuff like that. But I think the biggest chunk of people that watch it are post-college.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating.
Yeah. And then one last question before I leave, I'll let anyone else ask. You're doing stats right now. What do you think would be the next scientific field that that we should invest in democratize?
Yeah.
So make more available to
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I do statistics. I also do machine learning. Machine learning is very kind of like popular right now.
Yeah.
It has a history of kind of like becoming popular and then waning popularity and then coming popular again and then waning. And it's been doing this since the mid 1960s, where it gets a lot of hype and then it sort of like fails to fulfill a lot of its promises, and then it sort of loses popularity, and then like a new algorithm comes out and it becomes popular again, and then people are like, oh, it's kind of not working the way we thought it would. And that's sort of been the history. But right now we're kind of like, I think we're on the upswing of
Yes.
machine learning. And I think it's actually very important for people to understand how it works, because maybe for the first time in history, we can calibrate our expectations appropriately. And if we actually understand what it's doing, and it's not just some mystery box, I think the more people understand it, the more people's expectations become very realistic. And then the more people know sort of what it's good for and what it's not good for, I think then we can move on beyond just sort of like a lot of hype of like, oh, we're using a neural network, and they're like, oh, that's cool, you know, but do we know if that's appropriate or not, or what are we trying to get out of it? These are things that I think everyone could understand pretty easily. And then I think it'll make people maybe be a little more cautious when they put on their autopilot in their car, when they realize what that underlying algorithm is actually doing. It's not magic. So anyways,
do you think it would come with fear?
I'd be a little more hesitant. I'm not very confident that we will have self-driving cars in cities anytime soon. You know, maybe on the highway, on interstates where it's very regular flow and you don't have pedestrians, you don't have bicycles, you know, you don't have a lot of things that make driving kind of a complex, weird kind of human thing.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I don't know. I don't want to rain on the parade too much. I mean, if it works, it'd be awesome.
Perfect. Is there any more question from the audience?
We have time for one last question, I think.
Esther?
Well, first I wanted to say that I think what you do is really cool, and I think I probably learn as much on the internet as I do when I go to classes.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, please keep doing that, and I really like learning online from videos.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, like, how do you pick what material to talk about in your videos? Do you get like recommendations from subscribers, for example, or? Yeah,
so that it used to be that I'd just be working for someone in the lab, and it was just whatever I was doing for that person. If I was doing a t-test, I'd be like, well, I got to explain the t-test. If I was drawing box plots, I was like, well, I better explain box plots. Nowadays, it's a little different. I get a lot of recommendations all the time, and that gives me a sense of what people want to learn right now. Right now, everybody wants to learn about neural networks, and I'm working on it. And that's a big driver. But it's also, I'll be honest, a lot of it is still my own curiosity. I end up going down these random rabbit holes that I guarantee to create videos that no one's actually going to want to watch. I mean, people still watch these things maybe out of politeness, but a lot of it is really my own curiosity that's kind of driving these videos. I mean, I say occasionally, I'd say it's probably about 50-50 of me feeling like I'm trying to respond to what my audience wants, and then is 50%, and the other 50% is me just going, I need to really understand hypothesis testing today. There's some things that I've never fully grasped. And it sounds ridiculous because I've been doing statistics forever, but I just finally put two and two together as to why, when we have to specify a hypothesis, why do we also have to specify an alternative hypothesis when we base our conclusions strictly on the null, right? We only reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis. Our decision is made entirely from this decision. Why do we need to have an alternative? I just figured that out like a day ago, which is ridiculous. So I'm making a video on hypothesis testing, even though it's like one of the most basic things ever. I'm going to do it because I think I just learned something new about it. So, so it's about 50-50. I will say the reason why I did machine learning to begin with at all is I was at a workshop, and I was eating dinner with a bunch of people, and the guy next to me goes, "Do you know what a random forest is?" And I go, "I have no idea." And he goes, because I just read this paper and they used a random forest, and I was just wondering if you could explain how it worked. And I said, I'll get back to you. And so I did. I was like, well, I got to learn about decision trees. So I did a video on decision trees, and I eventually, it took me about 3 or 4 months, and I finally got to where I was thinking about random forest. And I got through that, and I was like, oh, this is fun. And so then I just kept the ball going and kind of rolling after that. So it is fun to hear what people want to learn, and it's fun. I'm a people pleaser, and I love giving them what they want. So it's a mix.
I see that you learn at the same time. You keep learning.
Oh yeah,
Stuff. And so yeah.
That's
so
what I
you'll
love.
never run out of material to explain.
Yeah, no kidding. That's what I love most about it. I love learning. And that's why I love focusing on those bits that I don't understand. Is when I finally figure it out, that little thing that I was like just sort of glossing over, and I go, yeah, sure, you go from A to B, no big deal. When I finally understand how you actually go from A to B, it's like I get up and I do a dance, I jump around the house. It's like the best feeling ever. And that's a big motivator for me. I just love making these videos because I love that feeling of discovery and understanding and solving a puzzle, finding that little piece and finally putting it in. I just love that feeling.
Perfect.
Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Big thank you for joining us this evening.
Yeah.
And again, we shared with you all a link to the StatQuest, the YouTube page. If you guys want to go see some YouTube video and some music video also, right?
That's right. I write songs every month. I used to put more music. When the channel first started, it was cooking. It was mostly cooking and music. And now it's none of those, but it's just all stats.
Perfect. A big thank you again for
Thank you
coming
guys,
to.
and congratulations. It's an honor to be here. I really appreciate just being invited. It means a lot to me that you guys would invite me. And like I said, I think what you guys have done is amazing. So congratulations.
Thank you.